The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coatar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coatar, Alderman Conway, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, 19 present.
Quorum being present, unless everyone in the chambers and galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Before we begin the prayer this morning, I'm going to also ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence for Alton Sterling, Philandro Castile, the 5 police officers who were also shot and killed, and the other 7 people that were injured in the shootings that happened this week. These shootings are tearing our nation apart, and we can and will do better as Americans. So join me in a moment of silent prayer for the families and friends. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We'll suspend with our regular order of business, take up our courtesy resolution calendar. Alderwoman from the 19th. Recognize you on the courtesy resolution calendar. Motion for the courtesy.
Ask for approval of our courtesy resolution calendar.
Been moved by the Alderwoman from the 19th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Alderman from the 12th, would you like to join me at the dais?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This morning, I am honored to do this courtesy resolution for Rose Garavaglia Gates, whose bar business has been in the family since 1939. They've been an anchor at the corner of Morganford and Loughborough. And just briefly, Rose, over the years, hired a lot of kids in school to help run up and down for and do a lot of things. And Rose has kind of been like the mother of the neighborhood to a lot of kids. So it's what kind of sadness to see Rose is retiring, but I thought it would be fitting for her. So I came up with this resolution. It says, whereas Rosalie Garavaglia Gates was born in 1942 to Joseph and Julia Cook Garavaglia, and whereas her parents were married in August 1939, and her father Joseph bought the Hilltop Inn Tavern that same year. Joseph and Julia ran the Hilltop together until Joseph's death in 1959. Julia then ran it until March of 1966. And whereas on April 1st, 1966, Rosalie became the sole proprietor of the Hilltop until its closing on June 30th, 2016. And whereas the Hilltop has been a neighborhood institution for generations, known for its excellent food service and reliable hospitality. And whereas Rosalie went to the elementary school at St. Stephen's through 6th grade, attended the Immaculate Heart of Mary for 7th and 8th grade, she graduated from Notre Dame High School in 1959. And whereas Rosalie married Bob Niels in 1961, and they had 3 children, Lisa Marie Niels, Robert Joseph Niels, and Michael Carl Niels. And whereas Rose also met the second great love of her life, Al Gates, whom she married in 1980. And whereas Rosalie is blessed with several grandchildren, Kennedy Marie Niels, Ava Rosalie Niels, Amelia Grace Niels, and Enrico Michael Niels. And whereas Rosalie's business was named the Neighborhood Business of the Year in 2010, and Rosalie was also an honoree of the Italian Open Children's Charity Golf Tournament. And whereas it is fitting that we congratulate Rosalie on her retirement and wish her well, she begins her next stage of life. Now therefore be resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we thank and instruct the clerk to spread a copy of this resolution over the permanent rolls of this board, as well as a commemorative copy to the end that it might be presented at a time and place deemed appropriate by the sponsor. It's just fitting. I've known Rose for years. Her family has been like everybody's family down there. It's going to be sorely missed, but Rose told me she's getting up there in age and she needs to enjoy herself and spend time with her grandkids. So I just think we ought to give Rose a round of applause. I'm sure a lot of people was eating down there before. So, Rose, I want to thank you and present this to you. And you're more than welcome.
Any further discussion? Any further? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we do this in bank.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, and Alderman from the 13th that we make this resolution in bank. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please make note of that change. Make courtesy resolution for Rosalie Garavaglia Gates in bank.
So noted.
Alderman from 13th.
I wanted to express my sorrow that you're leaving. I said I just have a little funny anecdote. One of the first places my, I guess, soon-to-be husband took me on a date or after a date was always to Hilltop. And one of the first times I was there, I foolishly ordered something called a golden Cadillac. And Rosie turned to my soon-to-be husband, Tim, and said, "Where did you find that girl?" And he goes, "Well, she just from the other side of the park." And so anyway, I quickly learned to love a glass of beer, and I have for 43 years since then, and many times at Hilltop.
Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Rosalie, don't close. I'll have nowhere to go when I leave my tavern. Please don't close. I want to get away from my customers every now and then, too. No. Thank you very much for all your years of service. You served many members of my family. One or two maybe a little too much. But enjoy yourself. Thank you very much. My pleasure knowing you. Thank you.
Alderman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I'd like to congratulate Rosalie and all the members of her family. My late parents and your parents, obviously, when people used to go out to eat like once or twice a year, and I finally remember your mom wearing her hair in a tight bun, if I'm not mistaken, and they would go out with Jean and Mrs. Roble.
Yes.
And if you put those six together, they could probably start a riot in a convent. but that was a long time ago. And Rosalie, congratulations to you. You were in a very, very tough business. My late dad did it for 47 years, and oftentimes would just come home, physically and mentally exhausted. And you did it right. You were an institution, and we're very, very proud of the business that you ran and the way that you ran it, and you'll be sorely missed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Rosalie, I want to just talk to you for a second about what this resolution is and what it means. This resolution is the highest honor the board has to give any organization or individual. And what it does, it cements in time some of your many contributions up until this moment into the permanent records of the city of St. Louis. So 100, 200 years from now, when you research the records of the city of St. Louis, you will see people will be able to read your name amongst those records and know that when you pass this way, that you contributed so much so that we pause in our deliberations today to recognize you, to make sure that you maintain a permanence within the records of the city. Again, on behalf of the residents of the city of St. Louis, my family and friends, and like many people in here, I've enjoyed your place many a times. Probably you didn't even know I was there some in the early days when I came there. But I want to thank you for the great service and the things that you've done to help to rebuild our community, hiring kids and making sure that they had opportunities and really understood the importance of a hard day's work. Let's give Rosalie and her family a big round of applause and thank you for the job well done.
I don't know if I can speak. I have a sore throat. But an overused word, but it still stands true to the... I'm very humbled by this. And just like Beth stood up and talked, in the last 6 weeks since I said I was going to quit, I've heard numerous stories like that. And the kids that have come back and thanked me, it's just overwhelming. And I thank you all so much. I'm so proud to have with my family. They all couldn't be here today, but thank you very much. And a big thank you to Larry.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolution. Calendar, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. With that, we'll return to our regular order of business. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 14th.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. President. I would like to have as my honored guest from the Laborers International Local 110, Clinton McBride.
Alderman,
This thing's so high. We don't need it.
Alderman from the first.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to introduce a person who was elected with me on my first go-round here at the Board of Aldermen, the former Alderwoman of the 19th Ward who currently resides in the 3rd, and one of my best friends when I was down here, and one of the gang of, how many did we have? 6 in our class, Alderwoman Velma Bailey.
Oh, yeah. Here you going, Alderman. Welcome. Yeah. Alderman from the 5th.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest Mark Spikerman of Gilmore and Bell.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to announce that there's going to be a summer camp, Sun Splash, in Fairgrounds Park, starting the 13th of June. And former Alderwoman Velma Bailey of the 19th Ward is running that thing over there. So
Excellent.
we know.
She lives in the 3rd now. She lives in the 3rd.
No, she was from the 19th Ward. She never was we ain't had a former alderman from the 3rd yet.
I said she lives in the 3rd.
And we didn't ask where she lived.
Ex-
And the kids are up there in the gallery, Mr. President.
Oh, welcome.
Yeah, so we're glad.
Welcome. Let's welcome the kids
Glad
in
to
the gallery.
have all the kids in the balcony, and we hope that you have a great time over there in the park this summer.
All right. Excellent. Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would like to have as my special guests today, I have Anthony Lancia, who's with the AGC of Missouri, Celeste Reeder with the Home Builders Association, and Kelly Ryan, a Washington University student in political science.
Alderman from the 9th.
Members of the board, I'd like to have for my honor guest today, Martina Johnson from the St. Louis Association of Realtors. Thank you.
Alderman from 22nd.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have Leroy Grant represent AT&T and Darrell Piggy as my special guest.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 18th.
President, members of the board, I'd like to introduce as my special guest Mr. Darrell Piggy, longtime resident, 18th Ward. Just to the left.
Any further introductions? Alderman from 22nd.
President, I'm not sure if anybody recognized her, but I would like to recognize my state rep, Carla May.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, Representative. We also have with us Terry Powers, Committeewoman Terry Powers. Thank you for coming. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're gathered here on July 8th for the final meeting of our summer break. It was on this day in 1776 that the Declaration of Independence was first publicly read. This is also Billy Eckstein's birthday for you music lovers. But more importantly, this is National Video Day, Game Day. For all you kids, go home and play with your Xbox. When I was a kid, we played with the box that the ice box came in after it got delivered. Thank you.
Yeah. We also have our new legal assistant, Jennifer Franklin. Jennifer, thank you for accepting the position with the Board of Aldermen. Alderman from the 8th, did you have an introduction or an honor guest?
This morning I have my good friend Leonard Johnson from the Treasurer's Office with us.
All right, thank you. And also John Godarby. That's our approval of the minutes. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for the approval of the June 24th meeting.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 26th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes. I have from His Honor the Mayor the following correspondence Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the Tax Increment Finance Commission. The appointment of Gail Brown, who resides in the 17th Ward and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2018. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Tax Increment Financing Commission.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we approve the mayor's appointment.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Baden Market Center Special Business District. The appointment of Mr. Richard Shaper, who resides in the 24th Ward and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2019. The appointment of Kenneth Robinson, who resides in Bell Ridge, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. The appointment of William Roach, who resides in the 2nd Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. The appointment of Dan Probst, who resides in the 24th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. The appointment of Beulah Brandon, who resides in the 2nd Ward, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. The appointment of Ralph Tatoan, who resides in Glen Carbon and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. The appointment of Tim Kelly, who resides in the 2nd Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2019. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 2nd, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Baden Market Center Special Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. It is a tongue twister. I move for adoption of the appointments to the Baden Center Special Business Tax District.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 2nd. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of report of city officials.
We'll dispense with line item number 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our former calendars? Alderman from the 8th, you're recognized.
Mr. President, I move board bill numbers 46, 47, and 48 off of the informal calendar.
All right. And you want to take them up here? Or
yes, let's go ahead and
right.
take care of
All
it.
right, let's start with 46. Madam Clerk.
Board Bill 46, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance pertaining to transit sales tax imposed pursuant to Ordinance 6316A, creating the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, directing the treasurer to deposit funds received pursuant to said sales tax into the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, Account 1, appropriating $11,132,000 from the said sales tax for the period herein stated to the Bi-State Development Agency and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on third reading the final passage of Board Bill number 46.
Mr. President, I move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 46.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 19th. Any discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you recognize close.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we third read and final pass Board Bill number 46. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyers? I didn't hear you. Alderwoman Flowers? Alderman Bosley? Alderman Moore? Alderwoman Hubbard? Alderwoman Ingracia? Alderman Coulter? Alderman Conway? Alderman Ortman? Alderman Vollmer? Alderman Villa? Alderman Arnowitz? Alderwoman Murphy? Alderwoman Howard? Alderwoman Green? Alderwoman Behringer? Alderman Rhodey? Alderman Kent? I didn't hear you. Alderman Kennedy? Alderwoman Davis? Alderwoman Spencer? Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Cone. 23 aye votes, 1 no vote.
By a vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 8th and 3rd read and finally passed Board Bill number 46.
Board Bill number 47, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance pertaining to the transit sales tax imposed pursuant to Section 94.660 of the revised statute of Missouri pursuant to Ordinance 64111, creating the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund, directing the treasurer to deposit funds received pursuant to said sales tax in the City Public Transit Sales Tax Trust Fund Account 2, appropriating $11,132,000 from the said sales tax for the period herein stated to the Bi-State Development Agency for certain purposes and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on 3rd reading and final passage of Board Bill number 47.
Mr. President, I would move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 47,
Moved
request
by-
previous roll.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Any discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you recognize the close.
I renew my motion.
And there's been a request for a previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
Board Bill 48, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $22,065,000, which sum is hereby appropriated out of the Transportation Trust Fund to the Bi-State Development Agency for transportation purposes and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on 3rd reading and final passage of Board Bill number 48.
Mr. President, I move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 48 and request previous roll.
We have some order. Alderman, please restate that motion.
I move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 48 and request previous roll.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you recognize the close.
I renew my motion.
Are you requesting previous roll?
I did request previous roll.
I know. It's been moved and seconded. There's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
That's the extent of board bills for third reading and formal.
Alderman from the 27th, you recognize?
Yes, thanks, Mr. President. I move to perfect Board Bill 88.
Off the informal count.
Yes, sir.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 20th, that we perfect Board Bill number 88. Alderman from the 27th, please proceed.
Yes, thanks, Mr. President. Again, this is traffic calming bill. This is not a citywide mandate. It just gives us another tool to use to make our streets safer. So with that, I close.
All right.
I'll take questions. I'm sorry.
All right. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 22nd?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. With the Alderman from the 27th, yield.
Alderman from the 27th, we yield to the Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes.
Alderman from the 22nd, please proceed.
Thank you. Alderman, I understand you went to Kansas City and you kind of learned more about how the speed humps are working there. Can you share with us how long Kansas City has had this plan in place and if they have any short-term or long-term success stories? Not long-term, but some short-term success stories?
Yes, and so they had it in place for 5 years at the time that we went. We rolled through many different styles of humps and bumps and traffic calming measures, and I can honestly say the stats that they gave us, I think the most impressive was they had record speeds on the street, let's say like Mimica in my ward. People are driving 60, 65, and the speed humps basically slowed them down to 25, 30. And they had a long list of accidents on different streets that they had showed us and where they implemented the different traffic calming measures, and it basically took their accident rate, cut it almost by 85%. And they were trying to implement more at the time that we were there. So to them, they thought that it was very successful. They used other methods too, chicanes and narrowing streets, bump outs and roundabouts and everything. And so, you know, like I said, I believe that this is just another tool that we will have in the toolbox to utilize.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further? Alderman from 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the sponsor. I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to see this bill introduced. It's a short bill, but it really is important. Traffic safety, quality of life in neighborhoods, speeding, these are really huge issues for people. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt we have too many car accidents. We have too many pedestrian injuries and fatalities in St. Louis, and it's impossible to police your way out of this stuff. You have to design your way out of it. So I look forward to seeing us finally be able to implement traffic calming that many other cities have implemented, and I think over time we'll see good results from these changes. And residents are asking for this every day. Literally every week, I get requests for people saying, please slow down traffic in my neighborhood. I'm scared my kids are going to get injured. You know, I'm scared when I'm pushing my child in the stroller. So we need people to slow down when they're driving in neighborhoods, and through this bill, it'll help us get there. So thank you.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman from the 14th. Somebody. Your former principal, maybe you can ask.
Children.
You may,
the instinct's there, Mr. President. The instinct's there.
All right.
Not by circus, though.
Yeah, not Alderman from the 26th.
Yes, I'd like to ask the Alderman from the 27th to yield.
Alderman from 27th, will you yield to the Alderman from
Yes.
26? Alderman from 26, please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Alderman, I just wanted to know, is there any liability issues, and has City Council really looked at this? So if, with the speed bumps or speed humps, if someone's driving and gets out of control and runs into private property, so are we covered on that so the city of St. Louis won't be sued?
Yeah, the city council's office actually had a hand in writing all of the language, so they said under that we'll be fine and we should be covered.
Very good. That's all I had. Thank you.
Alderman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to oppose Board Bill 88. I think if you use for an example the number of stop signs that individuals have requested in your ward, we would have a stop sign at absolutely every intersection. And although traffic calming sounds nice, it's nothing more than enforcing the posted speed limits that we have on the books right now, and traffic will be calm. It's using good common sense when you're behind the wheel. I went through the traffic calming policy, which is an awful lot of government, and we're going to get traffic engineers involved, but they're only going to be there during the busy times. And then we're going to get consultants involved, and then we're going to get BPS involved, and then 27 months later, when they say no, the alderperson gets to call the people back and tell them no. Such a deal. I can do that now. I fear that with the addition of speed bumps, speed humps, call them what you want, you're going to start an accordion effect that if you get them on one street, you're going to force that traffic over to the street to the east. And that street to the east, the traffic there will then be exacerbated twofold, because if you have an old car, and a lot of us do, you're going to avoid the speed bump street. Traffic will be slower, but you're going to go over to Street B, and then Street B's traffic is going to be overwhelming. So guess what? The people on Street B are going to want speed humps, which will then force them over to Street C. So this is really folly. Read the traffic calming policy. It is nothing more than a bunch of bureaucratic nonsense that is totally unnecessary. And furthermore, if the speed humps, speed bumps are in fact approved, we all know how well funded our street department is. If you want LED bulbs, you can get them, but you pay for them. If you want your street paved, you can get them paved, but you pay for them. So this is, in my humble opinion, something that I don't think is a step in the right direction. And I think once we start this particular process, it's nothing more. It's just going to spiral into something that I think will make our city just less navigable. And again, change sometimes is good. I mustn't, the people in the 11th Ward are all high-powered. All I get about the bike lanes is complaints. And I know a couple of my colleagues, I'm very close to one of them here, standing very close to one of them, and the other young man from our Dogtown area. I mean, it's a sign of the times, and it's coming, but I'm not so sure in a lot of instances where we have them, they make one bit of sense. And I, as the alderman, would rather have the overview to do what I think is best for my individual ward. So I don't think traffic calming is something that cannot be accomplished by everybody slowing down, and it's clearly an enforcement issue. If there's a particular street where the cars are going down 45 miles an hour and it's posted 30, a policeman there, he can meet the traffic engineer who's going to perform these infield observations during the morning 7 to 9 and 4 to 6. If that policeman has a radar gun, he'll calm the traffic, and you won't need a bump. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 16th?
Does the alderman yield?
Alderman from the 27th will yield to
Yes.
the Alderman from the 16th. Alderman from the 16th, please proceed.
I just wanted to confirm that I was added as a sponsor to this bill. Was that done?
Yeah, you were supposed to be on there. Yes, I didn't check and see if you were on there though.
Okay, I stand in support of this bill because in the 16th Ward, I've had to pay for traffic studies. And the reason we have to have traffic studies in the 16th Ward is we have one of the largest populations of children who walk to school. In trying to move 600 children through the 16th Ward across streets where people continue to speed, and we cannot get radar because we don't have but one radar gun in the 2nd District Police District, we can't slow the traffic. So we have to look at other measures. And I do not pretend to be an engineer. I do not pretend to know where the stop sign should or should not go. So I have to rely on those who are trained to do it. And since it's not easy to change streets, and sometimes it has to be done, I would prefer that professionals decide how those streets are changed to make it safer. And I wish I had a police officer to take radar like I did 13 years ago, but I do not. So I just want to make sure that the sponsor of the bill knew that I am in favor of this legislation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 1st?
Mr. President and members of the board, I supported this board bill coming out of committee because I thought it was the board bill for the alderman from the 27th, and if he wants to put these things into place, I know we've always said no speed bumps, and so if they came to a way to do that, that was not a speed bump, and that was a compromise, I supported it. I do not support this bill as a citywide bill. I don't support it because I don't like the language, specifically when you look at page 2, and the definition of traffic calming means physical design and other measures, including but not limited to. Whenever you put that in there, you open up a wide can of worms. So it doesn't just have to be physical measures. It does not specifically limit it to physical designs. Now, is traffic calming if I want to put a stop sign up there, because that's traffic calming. If I want to close a street, is that traffic calming? It is, because when we're doing it, that's what we're doing it for. If I want to turn a street around and make it from one way going west to one way going east, those are all other measures that could be included into this. Oftentimes when we write legislation, we make things too broad. And in doing so, it's only later that we find out that the bureaucrats will expand upon that to take powers that we perhaps did not mean to give. I do not want to have to then, every time somebody wants a stop sign, and then we have to decide if that's a traffic calming measure, or have BPS or the city councilor's office, especially this city councilor, come and say, oh, that's not legal, and so therefore you got to come before us, okay? We have unintended consequences when we write legislation, when we don't restrict to the way it's supposed to be. When we talk about, it says, including but not limited to narrow roads and speed humps put into place on roads with the intention of slowing down or reducing motor vehicle traffic, as well as improving safety for pedestrians and cyclists. What does it mean to put into place on roads? I always famously remember when President Clinton was in trouble, and he said it depends on what the is mean, and it does sometime in the law depend on what those words means. But if you're really trying to limit it to what is in this piece of paper, which I can support, then you should not have the words other measures, including but not limited to, because that opens up a can of worms that I do not want to have to address, and I cannot support it. And the other thing that I have a lot of problem is all requests for traffic calming and related traffic complaints received by the city of St. Louis. So is that through, how do we receive it? Are we receiving it through the aldermen? Are we receiving it through Citizen Service Bureau? Who are we getting these complaints from? And then it says it shall be addressed and managed in accordance with a centralized process to be known as the City of St. Louis Traffic Calming Policy. And what is that process? Go on to section 3. It says the director of street is hereby authorized to develop and promulgate the City of St. Louis Traffic Calming Policy, subject to the approval of the Board of Public Service. I have been waiting for 5 weeks for transfer sheets from the Board of Public Service for money that is mine rightfully, and they can't seem to get the transfer sheet, which they used to be able to get like in the next day or so. So they are willfully holding up my transfer sheets because of an illegal gas station that they allowed to be built at Kings Highway and St. Louis Avenue and Terry. So the Board of Public Service has absolutely no credibility with me because they are up under political control and they don't operate independently. So we might find ourselves giving away some things that we did not want to. And I most certainly don't think this Board of Aldermen needs to give away any more of their rights to a board of bureaucrats that were appointed by somebody else and don't have any of your constituents' best interests at heart, don't know them, don't know your neighborhood. You, as an elected official, know your neighborhood better than any of them. And although they may be engineers, that they are political forces that go about making people do things they're not supposed to do. And so I don't want to hand that over to any bureaucrats. And therefore, I will be opposed to this for the reasons I've stated.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 2nd.
Mr. President, members of the board, will the alderman from the 27th please yield?
Alderman from the 27th will yield to the Alderwoman from the 2nd.
Yes.
Thank
Alderman
you.
from the 2nd, please proceed.
Alderman Carter, where did you get the idea from?
What you mean?
of speed humps. Where did you get the idea from?
I got it from every other city. I got it from San Francisco, Kansas City. I mean, we had a lot of cities that that have already implemented this legislation, and they have this policy already in place. I had a few residents who have major issues with speeding, cars being hit, kids being hit on their block, and we don't have the necessary tools to implement better.
I'm not grilling you. I'm just asking
decisions.
where you saw it, that's all.
Oh, okay.
I actually saw it in Florida 4 years ago, and I recommended it to Todd Walterman, the street director at that time. And he told me that they couldn't do it because he felt there were going to be irrigation issues along the curbing, and it was going to be too much to do, so therefore he shot the idea down. Apparently I didn't take him to Kansas City to see it. Maybe I should have offered a trip and some lunch or dinner, but I'm glad that you were able to get them to see it in a light. Now, what I will say is this has been in the media for some time. I've had quite a few calls from people requesting them in alleys, requesting them on main arterial streets. As you know, you and I share Riverview. Some people think I have all of Goodfellow, and complain profusely about the speeding in the 2nd and the 27th Ward and all over the city, matter of fact. I'm going to support the legislation, but just like the Motor Own program, I kept telling people to wait. We didn't get the legislation. I really didn't know anything about it. It was in the media, and then it became a mayor's executive order. I still don't have anything in writing. I got a good email from the mayor's office, and I've been directed to the city website, and we're going to work that out. But I wasn't told that the aldermen were going to be the ones to okay that or not. And I've been confronted with a few people that are irate with me because they want 2 lots next door to their vacant home that are not keeping up, and they have a problem with why I won't let them have it. Because the city already has all these problems, so why can't they have it?
Right.
So I'm assuming now that as all the people, we will have to not only pay, but we will also have to approve these speed humps. Is that correct?
Say it again. I didn't hear the last.
That the aldermen have to pay with our capital improvement, and also go through the process of having neighborhood meetings with those blocks to understand the precautions, as we do with closures of streets and one-way sign streets and so forth. And again, go through the rigorous of getting beat up because maybe it may not work on their street, and then we might have to say no. I'm pretty sure streets like yours and mine that are very tight for parking already and have driveways, people are going to lose access to their driveways possibly, or even parking. And so in some cases, it's just not going to work.
Right.
And I know you know that, and we all know that. I just want the public to know that and want it to be said. So when I say that to you, you understand it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
But I've already had 2 requests for 3 speed bumps in 1 alley, which is not part of this board bill. And we have to understand that this is not for Riverview or Goodfellow or Natural Bridge or any street that is a main arterial street. So I just wanted to explain that so my public will understand it. I do not want to have the task of approving or disapproving or saying, sorry, it's not going to work for you, but that is our job here. So I'm going to support the project. I know that the late Alderman Greg Carter tried this 3 times. Even when they were speed humps, we were told through studies that you can go over these speed bumps at 55, 60 miles an hour. It really wouldn't do anything to you. I have a good friend that lives in Belnor, and I go over them quite a bit myself. Sometimes I remember the there, sometimes I don't, and sometimes I feel the brunt, sometimes I don't. But we're going to look at probably people coming off these speed humps and hitting parked cars. There's going to be issues with it. We'll have to probably visit this as we experience it.
Right.
I'm going to support it because if I don't, my constituents are going to beat me up because they had at least one thing that they can use. But I think we're treading some water here that we don't really know what we're getting into. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Alderwoman. I know he stepped back from the mic. I think he was yielding.
I am.
Alderman for the first, please.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 27th would yield, please.
Alderman from the 27th, we yield to the Alderman
Yes.
for the first. Alderman from the first, please proceed.
Alderman, I have a hard time querying you, but I will anyway in this case. When Section B, page 2, traffic calming means physical design and other measures, tell me...
I don't have the actual bill. But
you don't have the board bill?
I don't have the actual bill. In my
Okay, it should be in your
Mr. Clerk,
informal calendar book.
Mr. Clerk, could you make sure that the Alderman from the 27th has a copy of the bill?
I stole yours. That's like
He has one. Please proceed.
Okay, if you would look at page 2 of your bill, traffic calming
Yes.
means physical design and other measures. What does other measures mean? Why is that in there?
The other measures are, it was a few specific things that they used in Kansas City, and this was partial of the language that they used, but there's something called a chicane that makes the street pretty curvy.
Right.
Other measures are bump outs, roundabouts.
Right.
That is not included stop signs, street closures, and things like that, but
I'm sorry, did you say stop signs are not included?
no.
Okay, so my question is this. So since we know specifically what the other measures are, and I know you didn't write this.
Why we didn't specifically name them?
Why didn't you? Why? Because I'm telling you, they enlarge stuff. Lawyers enlarge stuff on purpose so that it's crazy. Okay, so whoever wrote this, if they specifically knew what the other measures were, they should have just put them in there. And what the things did not cover, they additionally should have put those in there, okay? That's what I told the Alderwoman from the 6th when she was handling your bill last week, is that she could not tell me what the specific things were because she was not here. But if you have them, this is what I call bad legislation, not on your part because you didn't write it, but whoever wrote it should have put that in there and been specific about what it includes and what it doesn't. It makes for when people down the road years later are trying to interpret what this legislation means, then they don't have something that it maybe could mean this and it maybe could mean that. Let me ask you, does it include or does it not, or is it intended to include? Because the way it's written, it does include stop signs and other things. Is it intended to include if you want to close a street?
No, ma'am.
Okay, but do you understand that closing streets is a means
It's a traffic calming measure.
and so so again, when I'm telling you, when it says in other measures, including but not limited to, even though you did not intend to do that, that's what this ordinance is doing, okay?
Right. And I
It's
think the number one
including
thing is to that they left it open in that realm so that in the future, things may change, something new may come, and we don't want to have to be here adding different or more traffic calming measures to that. So, but I understand what you're saying.
And I disagree, and I would say exactly we would want to come and bring it before us and examine it if it's something new, okay? We do not want the bureaucrats to be able to just say, so this is something new. That's our job. That's what we do. And, and we have to answer to that. So if we're a little bit more careful, then we don't have to add answer to, well, why is that happening and why did that happen? It's because we write loose legislation, okay? What is going on further in line 4? It says speed humps put into place on roads. Okay, and again, I know you didn't write this. Do you know who wrote this?
It was basically a small group of us, myself,
Okay.
Mallory from the city council's office, Deanna Vinker, and Jamie from Streets.
And I think Deanna does a great job, and Jamie, and I admire you and the things that you're trying to do. And I actually do not, in fact, I want to do traffic calming. Like I said, I already have some streets already lined up, because I have triple streets in my ward that are not primary streets. There's residential secondaries, but they include the 50, 51, 52. And we have been having a heck of a time because there are no intersecting roads. So once you get on that street, you can just zoom down. So I have actually met with them, and I like some of the winding things that they have. I like some of the traffic calming things.
Right.
But as I said, I do not want unintended consequences, okay? I don't want for them to then enlarge just what you said could happen. And then I'm saying, but I didn't mean to give you that power. So what was your intent when you said put into place on roads? What was that intent with that? Was that specifically to speed humps and narrow roads and narrowing roads?
Yeah, it was specifically to residential roads but speed humps and the chicanes and bump outs.
Okay, okay. And my other question is section 2. It says all requests for traffic calming and related traffic complaints received by the city of St. Louis. And again, my question was, how are they to be received? Again, should have been defined. You know, if you ever look at good legislation, it'll define all these things. What was your intent for this?
The intent was the complaints would come from either us, the alderman, the alderperson, or the street department.
Okay, but what about if citizens are called? Because I know a lot of citizens call about Kings
Citizen
Highway
service
is a,
group. Right.
you know, citizen service, right?
Well,
So-
but most of the time, those are given to the street department anyway, I think. And so
Okay.
the whole intent was for them to get it and then to then have that conversation with us, and then from there possibly move forward or keep it the same.
Okay, and what is the thought, since I think that the director of streets has way more sense than the director of BPS, okay? And I would trust her judgment way more. Why are we then tying her hands by putting the approval subject to the Board of Public Service?
Well, no, strictly for funding, because monetarily we have to spend our funds through BPS just in terms of the capital improvement money. But I see what you're saying. It possibly could have went straight through the street department.
Correct. And the other thing is that I actually am going to come with some, an ordinance that would take our...
We have some order.
I'm looking at how to take our money away from the BPS because, and we had to do that with the 50/50 sidewalk program years ago. BPS is too slow. They're not doing what they're supposed to. So when you give people more power to not do what they're already not doing, that doesn't make the process better, okay? So just wanted to kind of show you in action what would happen if we enact this, why I can't support this, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Any further? Alderman from 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just trying to remember in our conversations with the Streets Department, with BPS, some of these very same concerns I think that the Alderman from the first came up in those conversations. What the bill does is it just authorizes BPS to approve a policy. Then all these things they're gonna start with us. We're gonna talk to the Streets Department. The bill doesn't say that every single implementation of traffic calming has to go through BPS. There are instances where these things will be routine enough that BPS does not need to approve individual implementations. There may be complex areas where they do need to approve individual implementations, but what we're approving here is the policy. And we have to approve this policy because back in 2000, you can't hear me? I can't, oh, there we go. Could you hear me before? Okay. We have to approve this policy because back in 2011, we had a pretty poor legal opinion written by a junior city councilor who is no longer with the city saying speed humps, bumps, traffic calming is illegal in Missouri, which is just false. It's just not true. And in fact, we've got these things being implemented all over Missouri, including just a couple dozen yards from the city border in Maplewood. They're installing speed humps. I can see them, just like Sarah Palin. I can see them from my front porch. So the idea here is just to give us a couple more tools in the toolbox so that we have a way to address the very real concerns that the residents have about speeding, about traffic safety. And these things are, I mean, they're everywhere. Cities are doing these things because they work, first of all. And to the Alderman from the 11th point, in a lot of cases, they're a lot cheaper than an enforcement technique that involves a police officer. We can install these for a few $1,000s in a location, and it's going to control traffic speed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for years and years on end, for a relatively small investment. And yeah, it's not free, and it's going to take some time to to deploy these in kind of a logical way across the city. So, like everything, it's not a silver bullet solution, but it's definitely another tool that we hope will help us slow traffic down in neighborhoods, because, man, it bugs people. When they see somebody blow down their residential street at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, blow a stop sign, not even brake, it really irritates people. And it's just the reality that we don't have the money, we don't have the manpower to put police officers at every intersection to monitor this stuff. We don't need to, because there are hundreds of thousands of these things across the country, and they slow people down. And that's the goal. And when we slow people down, we improve quality of life in neighborhoods, and we decrease accidents for drivers as well. So I think my personal opinion is that the streets department could be doing this now, but in order to make them feel comfortable, given this silly legal opinion from a few years ago, we're going to authorize them to have a policy. And so hopefully we're not taking anything away from us. We are adding to what we can do in order to address resident concerns. So I hope we want those tools. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the sponsor yield, please?
Alderman from the 27th. Will yield to the Alderwoman from the 28th.
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 28th, please proceed.
Thank you. Having just listened to the explanation from the Alderman from the 24th about why we have to have this, do you foresee that we will have to do other ordinances and legislation in order to do things like bump outs at corners? I mean, there are a lot of traffic calming features which the street department currently does. I'm just wondering why we really have to have an ordinance for this, and I know the Alderman from the 24th sort of addressed that, but it seems like this would be within the purview of the street department to determine whether or not they thought this was an appropriate traffic calming measure.
Yes, no, we won't need any other ordinances or anything to add on after this. This covers everything. So, no.
And do we need this ordinance because there was a city councilor opinion from a few years ago? Is that the reason we need the ordinance?
Yes, we had a problem with this with the city councilor's opinion, and Todd Walterman basically finagled a few reasons why we needed it.
And did you explore the idea of getting the current city councilor to address the issue, update the opinion, or revise the opinion if she thought that was necessary?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. So I took a moment, because I did have a conversation with the gentleman that had been working on this bill with the Alderman from the 27th. And so for me, as I've said many times, we make things too complicated and unnecessary. We have a traffic calming policy which identifies process and procedure, lines of communication, and all things that can be inclusive, which is basically what we do now, but it's in writing. I think what is really bothering a lot of people is when you put the words speed humps or bumps into a bill, it gives a very specific connotation that you can't remove later on. And as I read this again and again and again, what we're trying to do is to adopt the traffic calming policy so that there's a standard of procedure for handling these situations, which is what we already do now, but just for making it fluid and we do it a specific way all the time, which means it's important to have the public meetings, it's important that the alderperson is present at every setting and/or has input at every step of the process, approve this ordinance for the traffic calming policy. But I would recommend, if it was my bill, I would take out the speed hump and I would take out number B. So in section 1, I take out A and B, which leaves a hole to approve the traffic calming policy. And I can give you a real quick, for example. We have a problem in my ward. We met with the traffic commissioner and all those people listed in the policy for procedure. We had some neighborhood meetings. We had some meetings with the business people who were involved in that particular area. We identified a number of different resolutions to the problem. We met again to determine which ones took priority according to expenses and all of that. Then that all went back over to the traffic people, and I guess they had this engineer that's in the policy look at some things, and they send it back, and you continue with the process. It's what we do already, but I think this could be important. I just don't think we need to identify speed humps in it. But I think the policy, the traffic calming policy, is a good thing to have in place so that BPS or street department or traffic or anybody else don't get out of line and leave parts of the process out, like leave us out or leave the public out or leave any part of these number of entities that are involved in the decision making out. So I like the policy. It's very inclusive, but I don't need these words in this bill. And so I'll leave it up to others who have more control over these bills. As you know, I very rarely offer an amendment to your bill. That's your bill. And if you listen and you figure out how to get your votes counted, you'll do what needs to be done. And I thought I expressed that when I talked to somebody. I think Jamie called me. I thought I expressed that those words, we have a problem with it. I have no problem with the policy. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from 21st.
You know, it is frustrating sometimes being an alderman in the city of St. Louis. You know, we get so much of the blame and the calls that really are meant for the executive branch. Frankly, this legislation should not be necessary. It is not required to pass an ordinance or a new law to put a speed bump up. It shouldn't be. What's happened in the city of St. Louis is that the mayor has had an anti-speed bump policy for as long as he's been in there. Now, you might remember a few years ago, I had a bill that we passed down here to put a speed bump in O'Fallon Park. There was a speed bump. There were speed bumps in Forest Park and in Tower Grove Park. We asked and requested speed bumps in O'Fallon Park. We were denied. So we came down here and passed a piece of legislation. It passed his full board. And it went to the mayor's office, and the mayor vetoed it. And he had his city councilor at the time write a completely ridiculous official opinion that said that speed bumps, in the administration's opinion, were illegal in the state of Missouri. Never mind the fact that, as I said, they existed in Forest Park at the time, they existed in Tower Grove Park at the time, and when you go to any major city across the country, any minor city in St. Louis County, you'll see speed bumps. And so when we pointed this out, that there are existing speed bumps, they actually sent a crew to Forest Park on a Sunday and dug up the speed bumps. That's how ridiculous this is, okay? And so now, aldermen, as we get all these phone calls, people are tired of the speeding. They are tired of seeing their residential streets turned into highways, and our hands have been tied. It's not much we can do. We can ask the police to put an officer on there, but you know, we are undermanned. We don't have enough officers to enforce traffic like it needs to be enforced in St. Louis. We ask for speed bumps. They say no. So we have tried to come up with some legislation to really just, as the legislative branch, to force the executive branch to do their jobs. And so here we are again trying to do that. Now I support this legislation because in the end of the day, we need street calming and traffic calming measures in our neighborhoods because it's a public safety issue. We have some major streets in the city that if you actually go to the street, you'll see there are really no legal ways to even cross the street, that you have to take your life into your own hands to make it from one side of the street to the other side of the street. How many people have been killed on Natural Bridge or on West Florissant or on Grand or on Kings Highway? So the state of our streets is something that the executive branch and the mayor have just dropped the ball on and have not taken seriously for 15 years. And so the legislative branch is trying to do our best. I think we should vote for this legislation. It gives us a new tool, but as has been pointed out, it still empowers the executive branch to actually implement it, and that has been the hurdle. That has been our own speed bump. And so I think we should vote for this legislation. I support it, and we should probably do it pretty soon. So thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 14th.
Good morning, Mr. President and esteemed colleagues. Would the alderman from the 27th yield to questions?
Alderman from 27, we yield the questions
Yes.
to the Alderwoman from the 14th. Please proceed.
Can you just kind of tell me how this will change the process of what we're doing now?
This will give us the...
Just walk me through. In other words, I get a traffic complaint. Just briefly, just walk me through.
Okay, so you get a traffic complaint.
I mean, I'm sure you don't get them, do you?
Say that again.
You don't get traffic complaints, do you?
I get a ton of them. So you get a complaint, and well, it's either you get it or the street department gets it. And so from that point, you sit with the street department. You talk about the different options for that specific road or for that specific piece of your ward, and there will be a study done. It depends on how large, how large the project may be, but not for every single hump. There doesn't have to be a study. And then from that point, the street department determines what may be the best traffic calming measure for you to use for that specific street. And from there, it's up to you to fund it.
So tell me this, the speed bumps, speed humps are an option. They are not a qualification of this bill.
No, it's an option, yeah. And it's speed humps, not bumps. It's a difference.
I know, there's speed
I know, I'm
bumps and
joking.
speed bumps. Okay. I guess what my fear is that with this legislation, I'm going to have constituents calling and they want a speed bump, speed hump on their street before any study's been done. And I guess if we write this out, if we write the speed bump, take that out of there, does that preclude us from getting them?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, no. I mean, it's in the traffic calming policy as well.
So if it's not in here, we can still, if the study indicates that a speed bump, speed hump is one of the answers to solving that problem, we can have that. Even if it's not written in here. They will take any measure that they deem necessary. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we're allowed to approve that?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Alderman from 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if we were filming this morning's meeting, we could play it back. The alderman from the 24th said it best. There's nothing in here that we can't do right now. And I think deep down we all realize that there's probably nothing illegal about speed bumps. Illogical? Yes. Illegal? Probably not. I think the alderwoman from the first asked if stop signs are in fact included in our traffic calming policy. And if you stop and think about it, if stop signs aren't included in your traffic calming policy, you have got a traffic calming policy that's got a hole in it bigger than me. For heaven's sake, the first thing you would think of if you're trying to calm traffic, sure as heck is not a speed hump, a speed bump, or a speed lump. It's probably going to be a stop sign. We here in St. Louis are famous for adding stop signs at most intersections which pollute, make noise, and really don't calm the traffic. This is much ado about nothing. I would contend that it just is It is not all inclusive. It should be somewhat less inclusive. We certainly have the Board of Public Service involved, and with all due respect, all I wanted was a camera at Virginia and Bates. The Alderman from 25th was going to help me pay for it. And it went to BPS, and it fell into that big traffic hole, and I still don't have the camera. I don't know what happened to that. BPS seems to be, they have got more stopgap measures than I've ever seen in my entire life. I think if you read the policy itself, the aldermen, in effect, are being emasculated to the point where they're reducing you more than we already have been with some of these departments to a tinkling cymbal, yet you've got to notify the people. That's your job. That's our job as an alderman. You've got to call the public meeting. And I think the kicker at the end is when they say no, then you, the alderman, are going to take the hit because the powers that be, the engineers and the traffic study people said, this is not a good idea. Mr. President, I think we're opening a can of asphalt worms here. This thing is ill-conceived. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the first.
Mr. President. Oh, no.
Yeah,
I've already spoken.
Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you. Will the Alderman from the 27th yield, please?
Alderman from the 27th will yield for question.
Yes.
Alderman from the 10th, please proceed.
Thank you. Have you contacted any of the emergency or police, EMS, fire department as opposed to this, or about this bill?
Yes.
Researching this online, it seems, I think it's New Jersey, Ohio, states that have actually put them in, have taken them out due to it's impeding the progress of the emergency vehicles getting to places, not to mention damage to, especially to fire vehicles with speed bumps and humps that have been installed. Have they been included in this conversation?
Yes, they have, and the police department, my captain specifically, she thanked me at the last public affairs meeting for putting this measure in place. Again, this is specifically for residential streets, not secondary snow routes, not main streets. So, you know, this definitely won't impede them from getting up and down certain streets.
Okay, now this requires, besides the hump, we have to put signage in, we have to put striping in.
Yes.
So, and then there's maintenance fees after this goes in. I believe it was back to New Jersey where they actually ended up finding out it took $500,000 to maintain these after about 5 or 6 years of use, which is more budget concerns for us. I mean, where's that money going to come from? The general budget, or does it come back out of our budget?
Well, they probably fund theirs a lot differently than we are proposing. Ours is specifically from capital improvement, and the maintenance will be a lot cheaper once they are already in.
Okay. I thank you very much. I support the spirit of this bill. I just think we need to maybe dissect it a little more. I know this is the last meeting, so there's not much time to do that, but there's much more discussion necessary. My ward does want traffic calming devices. We've been doing everything we can within the law currently to do that. But if you put these on one street, everybody's going to want them and not understand that they can be here and they can't be there, and we can only have so much money. But maybe we need to revisit this. Thank you.
Alderman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, so I want to address a few things. The Alderman from the 24th talked about the city councilor's opinion. I don't know if it actually was an opinion. A lot of times city councilors write memos and they pass them off as opinions, but I would like to speak to both of them to say, be it an opinion or a memo, it is not the law of the land. We are 15 aldermen are the law, and then if the mayor vetoes, 20 aldermen override a veto. So we have a lot more power than we think we do. So if you have 20 aldermen that are with you, you can override the mayor's veto. I do know why. I've been around here long enough that I know that the reason why city councilors did not like speed bumps is that they don't want to shift the burden of an accident to the city. If we install something and then there is an accident, then there will be a lawyer that will come along and say that because we put these speed bumps in place and then somebody was speeding, that we contributed to whatever happens. So if a car is driving at 70 miles an hour and it hits a speed bump and it goes onto the sidewalk and hits somebody, we have contributed to some of that. And so the lawyers did not want to have the city included in any of that. So that was the original, I think, intent of not wanting the speed bumps. Not that we didn't want to calm traffic, but was that the unintended consequence of including the city in on something that, whereas if the person is just speeding along and we haven't done anything to help create an accident, that we would be able to get out of being responsible for it. So I think that's part of what the city councilors' opinions have been. But as I said before, whatever the opinion was, just because they wrote it, it doesn't make it law. We make the law. Saying all of that, to then, as the alderman from the 11th said, to then hand over all our power based on the fact, well, the mayor had somebody write, who was a junior city councilor, write up an opinion, but now we're going to take our power and give it to streets and the BPS. The mayor appoints every person on BPS. So if you didn't trust him to be have the city councilor, why then would you entrust it to all of the people that you want to? Right now, there's nothing that prevents us from putting up a plan to close streets, have stop signs, reverse streets, do everything that's in this plan without having to go through the process of BPS or the streets department. If we come to streets department, if we introduce an ordinance and we get it through streets and we come out here and 15 aldermen vote for it, yes, the mayor has the right to veto. Then what we need to do, if we've already had 15, is convince 5 more of our friends that this is a great idea. And it's much easier to convince me if you're doing it in the 27th ward and not the 1st ward, okay? When you're telling me I'll have to put my power into the hands of BPS, who I already don't trust, and you're telling me you don't trust the city councilor's opinion because they report to the mayor, then you cannot trust BPS's opinion because they not only report to the same mayor, but they were also appointed. So this is a circular argument that makes absolutely no sense. If you don't trust the mayor, and you don't trust his appointees, then all of these people are his appointees. So that makes no sense to then take power away from the Board of Aldermen. Right now, I would suggest, I would say again, when this was coming out of Streets Committee, we supported it because we were under the impression that it was the aldermen from the 27th Ward, and we want to support. If he has something new and great, and he can show us that it's good in the 27th Ward or the wards that want it, I can support that. But the other of us who've been around here a little longer know what happens when you write bad ordinances and bad legislation, and we don't want it in our community. And so I would ask the alderman from the 27th if he would, 2 suggestions. One, I know you don't want to get this passed, but you don't want it to die either, is to maybe put it on the informal calendar and look to write specific legislation or make it for the 27th Ward and make it in the other wards that want it, and show us what a great thing this is. And then if it's not great, you'll come back and say, okay, I understand. But to try to pass this citywide, I think, is a mistake. And I would ask you to please listen to some people who have been here for a very long time when we tell you that later on you will not like the outcome of this, that this is not what you think it is. And so just asking you to think about those 2 things, either putting it on the informal calendar and making it very restrictive as to what this board bill pertains to, and or making it for the 27th Ward and those wards that want to be included. But please do not try to include the 1st, the 11th, and the other wards who do not want to be involved in this. And the alderman from the 11th, which repeated what I said, is indeed correct. If you do not have stop signs as part of traffic calming, then that's the first line of defense. So whether you intend it or not, and I will use this word again, unintended consequences, when you write legislation that is too broad, you will have included stop signs and everything else. I would not tell you wrong, Alderman, and you know that, okay? That legislation is not written well, and whoever wrote it, they made it too broad. And so rather than killing your legislation, because I do want to work with you, I would ask you to really consider putting it on the informal and amending it.
Alderman from 27th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I close.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th, that we perfect Board Bill number 88. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coatar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy. Was that an aye? Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coulter, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Boyd, "21 aye votes, 4 no votes."
By a vote, sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 27th and perfected Board Bill number 88.
That's the extent of board bills for perfection informal.
Would anyone like to take any further bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any formal? Alderman from the 24th, you'd like to take a bill off the informal calendar?
No, I wanted to move to suspend the rules. Sorry.
All right, we're not there yet.
Okay.
All right, would anyone like to take any further bills off of any of our informal calendars? All right. We'll dispense with line item 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 100, sponsored by Alderman Coulter, an ordinance approving and authorizing the city to execute an amendment to a development agreement between the city and Hallmark Hotels, authorizing the taking of other actions, approval, and execution of other documents necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent thereof, and containing a severability clause.
Reference to committee.
To the Housing Committee, Board Bill 100. That's the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
Following board bills were reported out of the Housing Committee. Board Bill 80, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property from J Industrial District to the G Local Commercial District and Office District in City Block 3919.03 for properties on Laclede and South Spring, and containing an emergency clause.
Dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 99, sponsored by Alderman Arnowitz, an ordinance relating to employees and salaries of the Office of the Recorder of Deeds, repealing Ordinance 69192, and enacting in lieu thereof a new ordinance pertaining to the same subject matter and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 92, sponsored by Alderwoman Murphy, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to vacate travel in the north-south alley in City Block 5334, bounded by Terrace, to the east-west alley as bounded by Terrace, Christie, Gravois, and Dahlia. Board Bill 94, sponsored by Alderwoman Behringer, an ordinance establishing a four-way stop site at the intersection of Walsh and Clifton by regulating all eastbound and westbound traffic traveling on Walsh at Clifton and regulating all northbound and southbound traffic traveling on Clifton at Walsh and containing an emergency clause. That's the extended perfection consent.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th and the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 93 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the execution of a parcel development agreement by and among the City of St. Louis, Northside Regeneration, and St. Louis Grocery Real Estate, and containing a severability clause.
Alderwoman from the 5th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection of Board Bill number 93 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to perfect Board Bill 93 as amended.
Moved by the Alderman from the 5th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Alderwoman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our ask here today is the approval of the development agreement and the TIF ordinance for a combined total of $2.8 million. It should be noted that the entire $2.8 million is for infrastructure and public improvements as required by the city. I think it's important to remember that back in December of 2009, the Board of Aldermen approved the Northside Regeneration TIF, and now in accordance with the development agreement, we're here asking that the release of the TIF funds be given to St. Louis Grocery Project upon successful completion of the proposed development. The area that's in question, I believe it definitely is a food desert. The primary needs of the North Sides are job, food, safety, and health care. The STO Grocery will bring with it both food and 72 new jobs to our community while offering people fresh and locally grown fruits and veggies, and I ask for your favorable support.
Any further discussion? Alderman from 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this McKee TIF continues. I feel like we're almost in the second decade of this thing. And so finally, they come to us with a couple of projects. Now, it's important for us to understand what these two projects are. They're side by side. One of them, as was spoken about, is a grocery store. That's a good thing. These poor communities need grocery stores. And it is appropriate for us to subsidize that because the grocery store business, frankly, is a tough business. And so of the $2.8 million, about half of the TIF goes towards this grocery store. Now, the other project, though, right across the street from the grocery store, is a gas station. Now, we may have a shortage of grocery stores in North St. Louis. There is no shortage of gas stations. There is no shortage of gas stations even where this project is going. There are at least 3 gas stations within a very short distance of where this new one is going to go. I don't think it's appropriate, number one, for us to be offering TIF to gas stations. Gas stations are popping up all over the place, sometimes even, as the Alderwoman from the 1st can attest, even when they are uninvited, they are popping up in some of our communities. So for us to go, have gone through all this for years and years, and finally we have what Mr. McKee has given us, and it turns out to be a gas station, is more than disappointing. But at the committee hearing, people from the community, mostly members and people who live within the area of the Old North Restoration Group, came to the committee and came with an issue. They said that they have been trying to negotiate with Mr. McKee on over 70 parcels that he owns, that he purchased years ago when he was assembling his mass properties. And when the TIF area was finally drawn, it did not include these areas in Old North. As you may recall, Old North got themselves excluded from McKee's TIF. Nonetheless, they have been fighting for McKee to either sell those properties to them or do something with them because they are impeding what Old North is trying to do in their community. And so they came to the committee and asked for help. They have not been having a lot of success with McKee. I would have liked to have seen the committee hold this and use this as leverage to get Mr. McKee to negotiate in good faith with those folks from Old North, because they deserve to have their community back. That didn't happen. And so we have an opportunity today to slow this thing down, to at least give them the summer to be able to negotiate with Paul McKee to get those properties. Now, if the sponsor is seeking to pass this bill today, she will, after perfection, will be asking us to suspend the rules in order to third read and finally pass it. Even those who support this thing, I would ask you not to suspend the rules today so that we not do two steps in one meeting, and to allow the folks of Old North the summer to negotiate with Paul McKee to get control of those 70 properties in the neighborhoods back. Now, leverage is a very important and powerful thing, and Mr. McKee knows about leverage. You might recall that the City of St. Louis, LRA, sold Mr. McKee several parcels just a short while ago, before the NGA announced that they were leaving and looking for new spots. When it turned out that we needed those parcels back in order to assemble the land for the NGA project, Mr. McKee held those hostage. He was beyond a tough negotiator. He was really being unreasonable, to the point where the City of St. Louis had to start eminent domain proceedings against him to get back the land we just sold him. We purchased unrelated debt to have leverage over him to force him to negotiate in good faith so we can get control of that land. And at the end of the day, land that he purchased from us from around $700,000, we had to buy back for him a short period later for over $1.7 million. Now that's a scandal. That's not a good partner. That is not somebody who is acted in good faith with the city. That is somebody who, at his advantage, holds people hostage to get what he wants. And so I don't think it is inappropriate in any way for us to help the people of Old North get what they need, which is control back of their neighborhood, from Mr. McKee, by making sure that this piece of legislation does not pass before they get that control back. So I would invite people to either vote no on perfection, or at the very least, vote no on suspending the rules on this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Alderman from the 19th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I know that I have been one of the stronger voices for the last 9 years against North Side regeneration, and I shall remain in that position when I see something wrong. Today I don't. And I'm going to explain a couple of things that I understood from sitting in the same meeting, and I also understand from knowing the dynamics of what is going on with other entities as well. And sometimes we don't know all the inside. So the first thing that I want to say is I respect Old North St. Louis, and I respect their desires. But I think we should be responsible in how we help them. Because you see, I don't know of a nonprofit but one in the city of St. Louis who could effectively take 60-something or 70-something parcels under their responsibility, maintain them, most especially because most of them are in disrepair, keep them boarded up, pay taxes on it, and even find a way to try to resell them or something, because they just don't have the manpower, they don't have the money, and we need to help them accomplish their goals. As I said in the committee meeting, there is a way, there's a process to do that. I've done it before. I used to work for Old North St. Louis. I was a community organizer over there for a number of years. I know the community extremely well. Unfortunately, they don't have a director right now, and that's another burden. When you don't have an executive director who handles the day-to-day for you, it's very hard to execute things. And I know that the president of the board has stepped in to do as much as he can to keep their agenda moving forward. But at this moment, I'd rather keep those parcels there where Paul McKee is paying taxes on them until we can come up with a plan and help Old North St. Louis move their agenda forward. You see, in redistricting, I understood my challenges as well dealing with Paul McKee. So what I did was, I had to put the think cap on. And so I came up with a document for myself. You don't sell nothing in the 19th Ward. You don't make plans and have conversations in the 19th Ward. You don't make no plans unless you include, and I included my community college, my Vashon High School over there, my churches, of course me, but I included the community. We're gonna have to have a conversation about what you wanna do, okay? And that's the first thing that Old North needs to get in place for themselves. Then the second thing they need to get in place is a plan of action. They don't have a plan of action because there's absolutely nothing that they can do with 70 parcels of property tomorrow, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or 5 years from now. So to hold up an economic development opportunity for a ward and for a constituency of people who need these services, and I don't get into these service stations no more because I haven't had anybody build one in my ward yet, and I probably never will, but everybody's building them. Quick Trip building so many service stations. Every time I drive south, I see a new darn service station going up. And it's about 3 or 4 others who are doing them. So it's just being done, okay? So that has nothing to do with this right here. We finally getting something done over there. Finally. Let's move this project forward. And then the ultimate of all of this, what we're talking about is, this TIF is an infrastructure TIF. There's a big difference. It's not the project TIF, it's an infrastructure TIF. So when you spend money on infrastructure, you're spending money on the city of St. Louis. Those are our streets. All of that money, when it goes in, the improvements belong to the city of St. Louis. So we're simply investing in ourselves and the betterment of that area. So we're not investing in the developer. We're not investing in another corporation. We're investing in our own infrastructure, which is the only reason that I voted for that TIF in the first place, after I beat him up real good, because it is an infrastructure TIF, because he wouldn't have got anything else. I'd have still been with my banner against nonsense. I'm against nonsense, and I'm against people who don't have good plans, and that's been my problem with him all along. But when you got a project before you, move it. Don't stall it, move it. Because now we're talking about some services for that community. We're talking about some additional jobs for that community. We're talking about improved infrastructure for the community. There are too many reasons why. There's a parallel process that needs to go on for Old North. We should be responsible in doing that. I will never get in the way of the alderperson from the 5th Ward, but I've also offered my talent and my time to help them. Plus, I already know a number of the people who have already invested in Old North. I will talk to them, why don't you invest a little bit more money? So there's ways of getting things accomplished, but it's not by stalling. Stalling is an easy thing to do, but it's harder to think outside the box, keep something moving, improving, and being dedicated to a process. And that's all I'm going to be doing today with my vote for yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I am intimately familiar with illegal gas stations in North St. Louis. And I'm familiar with them because they're building one on the Terry residential street, contrary to a plan that the Board of Aldermen, a law that strictly prohibits them from doing that. All the zoning laws say you can't do that. So when I hear the Alderwoman from the 19th talk about what they can't and won't do, they will break the law under the mayor's direction, okay? They will break the law even though we passed them. They will do that. And my thing about TIF's tax increment financing is that they have a rule that says, but for, there's a test, but for that it wouldn't get built. If we look at these millions of gas stations that are being built in the city of St. Louis, and I know that millions is an exaggeration, but many, 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 we don't need to give a gas station a TIF for anything. They will almost pay you to put a gas station there. For within my house, after we passed this legislation that said it couldn't be here, and they built it anyway, there are about 10 gas stations that we could walk to. It's just totally ridiculous. I've been here long enough that I remember when Snooks built the grocery store downtown, right by where is now the new bridge over to Illinois. And that was when we were first dealing with Union and Natural Bridge. And Snooks, after they built it, closed it back down, said couldn't handle. They didn't have enough people, and they closed that store back down. They went on to close 5 other stores. I do believe that there is a need for a grocery store there, because the only grocery stores in North St. Louis are small, little, what they call convenience stores. I call them nuisances and inconvenience stores. We got the Snooks at Natural Bridge and Union. I think we got a Save a Lot on Natural Bridge. We got a Save a Lot maybe on Grand. And do we have any other grocery stores? That's kind of sad. That's sad when you talk about maybe up in the 27th or 27th or 2nd Ward, someplace far up. They used to have Sterling's, but that closed. But we don't have grocery stores. And I'm familiar enough to know that when we were building Union and Natural Bridge, Snooks told me they were going to close those 5 stores. So I fought them with all my political power and for them not to get any money. And they didn't get a TIF at Union and Natural Bridge because we were supposed to have a 30-acre development, and we ended up with a 10-acre grocery store. They still got $4 million that the former mayor gave to them after Alderman, after myself and Shamo bought the land. Then he gave that land to them, but they shouldn't have even gotten that. I did not want them to have that because they closed 5 grocery stores. So I agree with the Alderwoman from the 5th. They do need a grocery store. We need several grocery stores all over North St. Louis, but I do not agree that we need to give a TIF to a gas station. I don't care whatever that is. They ought to be banned in all of North St. Louis. There is no need for a gas station in North St. Louis, and probably soon there are going to be some lawsuits about these things because it is ridiculous when the neighborhood doesn't want it and there's laws that say you're not supposed to have it, and then they're popping up anyway. Somebody is doing something wrong. And this is, so the part about the grocery store, I wholeheartedly agree with. Good for you. I hope you can get a Target and a Home Depot, because I have property near that. In a Home Depot, I would probably come in and bow down, okay? So we got, Lowe's and Menards. Those are all the things we need. But I do not support TIF for gas stations, not for Salamas, who is horrible and has no business being in anybody's neighborhood at all, and not for anybody else, not even my friend Mike. I don't want to see another Crown. I cannot stand driving home on Kings Highway now to look at the gas stations. And just so you know, I hear it all the time from my community. We don't want any more gas stations. There is a reaction to that. And then they got all the flags up there and all the junk up there. It's horrible looking. It's depressing to have to drive down a beautiful boulevard and look at that. And so I do not want to see that in any other neighborhoods, those gas stations. And then the people who build these things live way someplace else. They don't care anything about zoning. They don't care anything about how it affects. They keep them open 24 hours a day. If you have been used to having a quiet neighborhood that kind of pulls its sidewalk in at 7 or 8 o'clock, and all of a sudden you...
Alderman from the 17th, please.
We're discussing a TIF in the 5th Ward, not the gas stations for all of North St. Louis. I mean, many of us have other things and responsibilities. I love to come down here every Friday and hear the oration from the Alderwoman from the 1st Ward, but if she could just keep her comments germane, we could all get out of here a little earlier.
And Mr. President, my comments is germane about why I am opposed to a gas station. I know the Alderman from the 17th thinks that we're just the 17th Ward, but we are but he referenced me, and you didn't say that to him. So we are not a city that stands alone just so that you can have your little pristine area. We are an entire city, and when you have hold on a second. Both of you guys, hold on.
Alderman from the 17th had brought forth a point of order about the comments of the Alderwoman from the first being germane, and she was talking about gas stations and the impact of service stations within her ward and how that is, in league with this bill. I'll ask that you keep your comments germane and let's continue to move the meeting forward.
For a point of order, I was not just talking about the gas stations in my ward. I was talking about them holistically as to why I didn't support them. That it's not just my ward. Okay, if it was just my ward, we wouldn't have them. I was saying that in North St. Louis, that the 5th ward is in North St. Louis.
I got that, but let's just let's move on so that we can.
I do not believe that his point of order is germane to anything except for he doesn't want to hear me talk, and I can talk if I want to. That's what I was sent down here for. When he talks, I don't get up and say that. He's not germane on many points.
Alderwoman, I'm not, because if I filed in his favor, if you read the rules, I would be asking you to sit right now, and I'd be moving on with the meeting. So I'm not doing that. But I'm asking you to continue. So can Alderwoman, just continue your discussion. Right.
But I just want to make it clear, I'm not talking about my ward, I'm talking about the city in general, and this is when we're asking, if Mr. President, here is my point. When we are asked to vote for legislation, if it only involves them and nobody else, then don't ask the rest of the aldermen to vote. Just let them vote for it and pass it out. But it impacts it.
Now, Alderwoman, we're done with the point of order. What I need you to, please, and if we can have this other discussion later, we're done with the point of order. What I'm asking you to do is just continue with your comments on the bill. But we're done with the point of order. Please proceed, Alderwoman.
I'm talking about my ward. I'm talking about the entire city. And I still am, and about the impact of service stations and giving them TIF, and specifically the TIF rule that
again, Alderwoman, let's stay on. Okay. All right, go ahead. All right, go ahead. Thanks, Alderman. Please proceed.
And again, I've been talking about there is a TIF rule that says, but for, that you do not give TIFs to things that can be built without a TIF. There is no necessary need for a TIF for a gas station. That is not necessary, and the point of why that's not necessary is to look all around you and look at the proliferation of gas stations, okay? So that is my point, is that this is a holistic city and that there is no need for that. And although I applaud the grocery store and any other things that there are many, many needs for in North St. Louis, a gas station is not one of them. And I will not be supporting a TIF for a gas station.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just bringing it back to the point here. So whether or not we need a TIF for a gas station is one consideration. People will make their own judgment about that. The question that we are having, not only with the perfection motion, but the following motion to suspend the rules, is whether this is the kind of thing that should be fast-tracked at this point. Should we fast-track this legislation when we have a citizen group who is trying to get the city to help them to negotiate with Paul McKee to get control of these 70 parcels in their neighborhoods? And I'll say this, too, about that area, is that Old North is one of our better cubdos in the city. They're a cubdo that actually has a record of accomplishment and achievement. I think I would put their record up against Paul McKee's record of development in that area over the last decade. They have done a much better job than he has in that regard, and they need the city's assistance. And I think we, as a board, we give Paul McKee everything he asks for, and we have seen nothing as a city. Over the last few months, it feels like we have short-term memory loss here, is that over the last few months, Paul McKee has not been a friend of the city. He has made it very difficult for us around the NGA project of acquiring the land. He has cost us more money than necessary. He has used his leverage, and he is not minded delaying our progress in any way to get what he wanted. And so I don't think it's too much for this board to extend that same courtesy to Old North, to give them the summer to negotiate with Paul McKee to get control of those parcels that are in their area and in their neighborhoods. So,
All right, thank you.
oh, and I would also ask for a roll call vote on perfection.
Alderman from the 17th.
Mr. President, I'll try to be brief. I just wanted to make two comments in response to some of the debate. I agree that it is probably a bad policy to use a TIF for a gas station if it's a site-specific TIF. Who would want to do that? I mean, I don't think that makes sense either, and I wouldn't be supportive of that. But in this instance, it's a little different. There has been, since I've been down here, there has been complaints about the neglect of North St. Louis. And I think many of those complaints have probably been valid complaints. And this TIF, the vehicle was Paul McKee. I mean, we don't have to like Paul McKee, we don't have to dislike him, but the reality is that by historical standards, I think that the commitment, the size of this TIF, what the city is trying to do is unprecedented. And I think that this is, we've been waiting and waiting for a very long time for something, you know, these seeds that we're planting up there. And if we're taking the sales tax from a gas station, instead of sending it down to the city and for general revenue, where it would be spent somewhat equally throughout the whole city, this is giving us a vehicle to take the sales tax revenue from that gas station, make the street improvements that will hopefully create opportunities to do other development along the street. Part of it will go ahead and help subsidize the grocery store. The thing that I've learned in my experience is there's some things that when you subsidize them, they create value and demand. And I think grocery stores are one of the biggest things that we can do for a neighborhood to make them more desirable. And grocery stores aren't particularly a very profitable business. It's a 1% margin business, and it's a tough business to make a living in. So this is going to give us an opportunity to help subsidize a grocery store that might not otherwise get built. It's going to help us do some infrastructure. It's, I think, a testing ground to see if McKee's, you know, and this developer is serious about what's going on up there. And the last thing is, and I agree with the alderman from the 19th about, or excuse me, the 21st about the impact of leverage and the role of leverage. And I think Mr. McKee understands that. After our meeting on Wednesday, the following Friday, I was in communication with the head of the Old North St. Louis Neighborhood Group. They had a several hour-long meeting with McKee. While it's not finalized, I think they, judging from the voicemail he left me and the text that we traded, that there was significant progress made, not finalized, no commitments here on the floor, but we'll have plenty of other opportunities to exercise leverage with McKee down the road, and I'm just anxious, I think, to see if something can actually get done up there and we can start putting two bricks together and getting a new building built. So I'm going to support this, and I'm anxious to go ahead and try to get this thing started. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
As members of the board, the alderwoman from the 5th talked to me, and because of her discussion, not anybody else's ignorant comments, I am going to vote present because I do support her stores, and I hope she gets many, many more stores that are not gas stations, but she told me why she needs it, so I am conflicted, so my vote will be present. That's what I told her I was going to do.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 5th, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand some of the issues and concerns that were brought up. I definitely would like to reiterate what Alderman Rhodey said regarding the TIF. It's not that they're allocating TIF for a gas station. They need the gas station generating TIF revenues to help subsidize the entire project. You know, I know there's some frustrations across the board. I've waited a long, long time, even before I got down here. I've waited for something in my community, something as simple as a gas station. And just to be perfectly honest, sometimes it blows me away when you have people outside of the ward feel they can advocate for residents better than I can, and I've been elected to lead them. And as I always state, I would never do that, and I would show everyone else that courtesy. It's been a long road. We have other projects in the pipeline. This will be the first of many. I think we owe it to NGA. You know, when we lobbied them really hard, we told them that we would start creating some development. And, you know, it would just be a disservice to the people in that community to have them wait an entire summer just to get something as simple as a grocery store. I mean, I don't know how your wards are set up, but in my community, we have people catching public transportation to South St. Louis and other places just to get groceries. And if they can't do that, they're limited to going to some of these gas stations that Alderwoman the first spoke about, where they're being charged 2 and 3 times the price for things as simple as fruits and vegetables. So I understand the concerns. I definitely understand the concerns of Old North. And I think what's being missed in that entire situation is that right now they're going through some leadership changes. So the communication has not been back and forth like it should have been. But early on, I sat in some of those meetings where they were willing to negotiate on some land deals. But when the leadership changes in the organization, you can't just rush things through. And me as their alderperson, I haven't seen any drawn out plans on what they plan to do with 70 parcels. And I just, I know we've all had our issues with Northside Regeneration, but I just don't think it would be fair to the developer, because any non-for-profit can pop up and say, okay, give me this land back. They weren't even negotiating buying the land. It was just like, give us the land. And so I think we have to consider what's in the best interest of everybody. And with that, I just would like to ask for your favorable support. It's my hope that we could get this bill through. The people in my community need it, and I just hope that I can count on your support. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd, that we perfect Board Bill number 93 as amended. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruson. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Green. 20 aye votes, 3 no votes, 1 present.
By a vote, you stay in motion, Alderwoman from the 5th, and perfected Board Bill number 93 as amended.
That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bill 99, 92, and 94 from the perfection consent calendar to the third reading consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on the motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley,
No, just these.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coatar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd,
To move these bills down.
Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coulter, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Cone,
Aye.
and you wanted to change.
Oh, no, not for you.
Alderwoman Spencer changes her vote to yes. "24 aye votes, no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the 18th, and move the aforementioned bills to the third reading consent calendar. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize.
Mr. President, members of the board, on behalf of the Alderman from the 7th, and having voted on the prevailing side, I move to reconsider our vote to third read and finally pass Board Bill number 81.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on that motion.
To reconsider.
To the motion to
Board Bill.
It's been moved, and I entertain a second on the motion, then we'll bring it up for the second by the Alderman from the 23rd. Alderman from the 18th, would you like to talk about the motion reconsider?
Yes. This motion would reconsider the vote at third read and finally pass Board Bill 81. According to the clerk, that bill was first to have been approved by the Board of E&A before final passage from the Board of Aldermen. This is a bill of Alderman Coatar. It was finally passed here, but it has not been approved by the Board of E&A. So the sponsor of the bill would like to reconsider it and then place it on the third reading informal calendar, giving E&A time to make approval of the bill before finally passing it.
Alderman from the 25th.
I'm a little unclear about this. Have we, I can't recall in 8 years of being down here, have we ever reconsidered a bill that's currently sitting on the mayor's desk to bring it back over to the Board of Aldermen?
Yeah, we have you'd have to direct your question to me. We have right at the next regularly scheduled meeting to reconsider any bill. This would reconsider the bill, bringing it back to the Board of Aldermen prior to the mayor acting on it, and then it will be placed on the informal calendar. And according to the City Council's office, our attorney, that's the best way to handle the bill. The sponsor requested that the bill be placed on the third reading calendar in error, the primary sponsor. Alderwoman from the first.
Points. I agree with what you just said, and added to it that you have to have been voted on the prevailing side to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, but I couldn't hear what this bill pertained to, and it's not on, since it's not in our books. Can you explain again what this is? Because we couldn't hear down at this end.
Alderman from the 18th.
We need to get it in front of us. It was the development bill on 705 Olive.
All right, thank
And
you.
then the sponsor just handled it in
Yeah.
error that way.
And the
I
sponsor
just-
has requested it.
No problem. I just,
Yeah.
I couldn't hear, we couldn't hear down at this end.
Okay.
Okay? And
All
we
right.
don't have it in our book since we
Right.
already passed it out. That's all. Thank you.
Alderman from the 24th, anything pertinent to the motion that's before us? All right. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd, that we move to reconsider the vote on Board Bill number 81. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Green. Alderman French. "23 aye votes, 1 no vote."
By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 18th. Alderman from the 18th, would you now like to request that Board Bill number 81 be placed on the third reading informal calendar?
Is it on the informal calendar? Third reading informal calendar.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Place Board Bill number 81 on the third reading informal calendar.
So noted.
Alderwoman from the 5th.
Mr. President, I'd like to move to suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bill 93 as amended to the third reading calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd, to suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bill number 93 as amended to the third reading, the regular third reading calendar. Alderman from the 24th.
Can I ask the Alderman from the 5th to amend that motion to include Board Bill 88 so we can take one vote on both of those?
You want to? Yeah, you may want to split those up.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 21st.
Yes, this is on the, to move the 93 as amended to the...
Third reading.
Right. So again, I'll just reiterate. Mr. McKee has dragged his feet on this project for years. To give the folks of Old North the summer break to be able to negotiate in full faith is not too much to ask. I do not think that a TIF of $1.4 million, that's half of the $2.8 million, but 1.4 specifically for the gas station TIF is worth fast tracking, especially considering the community opposition as they expressed at the committee hearing. Now, this bill narrowly passed out of committee by just one vote. So I think it is perfectly okay, even if people support final passage of the bill, to say not to fast track it today and to not to suspend the rules and give those folks of Old North more time to negotiate and then come back and give it a vote. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 22nd.
President, members of the board, I don't see this as a way of fast tracking the bill. If we were meeting next Friday, the bill would just be held over for next Friday. But since this is our last day of the session, we won't be back to September. I don't think it's fair for the developer to have to wait a couple of months. just because some people have some issues with him personally. As I listen to some of the comments from some of my colleagues, it frustrates me when we pick on an individual. It's a rhetorical question, but if this wasn't Paul McKee, would it be okay? But since Paul McKee's name continues to come up over and over and over again, it gives a sour taste in people's mouths down here. But if we continue to do things, put obstacles and roadblocks in the way and impediments, he'll never be able to do anything. We don't need to be the judge of whether or not he's going to be successful or not. We need to be responsible to the constituents of the 5th Ward. If this is something that they want, if this is a great opportunity for them, we should support that. As the Alderman from the 1st said, they need a grocery store. They need a grocery store down there badly. And this TIF is not about just the grocery store. So I want to encourage my colleagues to go ahead and support suspension of the rules, you know, for the purposes. Otherwise, you're just saying we're going to continue to delay this project as long as we can. But the inevitable is it's going to pass, whether it passes out today with suspension of the rules or in September. You know, why wait? Why don't we just help do the people's business and get this over with? Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 21st.
Mr. President, my friend from the 22nd Ward asked, you know, would we be doing this if it wasn't Paul McKee? You're right. You know, first of all, we wouldn't be giving a TIF to a gas station if it was any other developer. But secondly, yeah, are we talking about a developer who just a short amount of time ago, this board had to file legislation to implement eminent domain on his properties to force him to negotiate with the city to purchase back land that we just sold him. This is a developer who has not been a good friend, who we have had to go to war with in order to acquire the land that we needed for the NGA project. And now he comes to us with this subpar deal. You know, the folks of that area, the folks of the city, in fact, who have supported the largest TIF in state history for this thing, did not expect to only get a gas station. That's not what people were sold on in that neighborhood, okay? They weren't sold on the idea that we're gonna give this huge public subsidy and what you're gonna get in return is a gas station. You know, what we have is an example here of, you know, a turd being wrapped up in a bow. And the turd is the gas station and the bow is the grocery store. All of us support the grocery store. But for him to put it together with the gas station is just another example of manipulation. And so if this thing was separated into a piece of legislation, a TIF for the gas station, and a piece of legislation, a separate TIF for the grocery store, I would happily vote for the grocery store. But to accompany it with the gas station is one, just bad faith, I think, because that is not what folks had thought they were going to get. And then two, if you have this organization who came to committee hearing, who gave us their testimony, they showed up, again, this thing narrowly passed out of committee by just one vote, and they asked for more time. Now, it's been said today that negotiations are going on, and that's good. That's a good first step. I'm sure that was initiated after their testimony at the hearing, and many of us speaking in favor of holding the bill to give them more time. So I don't think it's too much to ask to give them a few more weeks, period.
All right, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 5th, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's important for us to understand that holding this bill until the fall will definitely jeopardize the $10 million grant that's in play from the USDA regarding the grocery store. And everything is contingent upon, that $10 million is contingent upon getting this ordinance passed, which is a condition of the loan. So I think it's important for people to understand that. I think it's important for my colleagues to understand that to vote no for us to get this bill moved to the third reading calendar, it's basically telling the people in North St. Louis that we don't need to fast track a grocery store for you all. And it's important, we need a grocery store. We've waited a long time, and I mean, I know there's been some delays, but it's not like people have been beating down my door over the last 5 years that I've been elected, or 6, trying to do anything in my community. This is the first of many projects. We owe it to NGA to develop something around them. We told them that we would. Right now, we're in the process of trying to build 500 residential units. They are under the understanding that we're going to have a grocery store in the pipeline as well. And I just would hope that you all would make the best decision. And let's not get caught up on some of our past, histories with this developer. It's about the people in the community. And if nothing else, we owe them a grocery store. And it just blows me away when, people keep saying it's just only a gas station. No, it's a gas station and a grocery store. And this $2.8 million is specifically for infrastructure. It's not like it's any money going into anyone's pocket. And with that, I'd like to renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 5th, seconded that we suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bill number 93 as amended to the regular third reading calendar. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. I didn't hear you. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
No.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Cone.
$18.
18 aye votes, 4 no votes, 2 present.
By your vote, you stay in the motion. Alderman from the 5th. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill number 93 as amended on the third reading calendar.
So noted.
Now, Alderman from the 24th and Alderman from the 27th, you want to include both of these together. Alderman from the 27th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend the rules for the purposes to pass Board Bill 88. Third reading, I'm sorry.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderman from the 24th, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of bringing the aforementioned bills down to the third reading consent calendar.
Reading consent.
Ms. Bennett, are you, I think you said third, Alderman from the 27th, did you say third reading consent calendar?
Yes.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderman from the 24th. There's been an objection to previous roll. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coatar, Alderman Conway, Alderwoman Green, "21 aye votes, 3 no votes."
By your vote, you stay in motion. Alderman from the 27th, and place the aforementioned bills on the third reading consent calendar. Alderman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respectfully request that Board Bill 88 be placed on our third reading and final passage calendar.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that change. Move Board Bill 88 to the regular third reading calendar.
So noted.
Any further changes? Any further changes? Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard,
Except for 88.
Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coatar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Coatar, Alderman Conway, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman French, Alderman French.
I was out.
22 aye votes, 1 no vote, 1 present.
By your vote, stay in motion. Alderman from the 18th and third read and finally passed the aforementioned bills. Third reading, report of engrossments.
Read third reading consent. I didn't read third reading consent.
Madam Clerk.
Board Bill 62, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute upon receipt the sum of $1 a quitclaim deed to revise, release, and forever quitclaim unto the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority city-owned property located in city blocks 2316, 2327, 2328, and 2347, which property is known as 2535 Cass, 2337 Madison, and 2525, 2526, and 2533 Maiden Lane, containing an emergency clause.
Alderwoman from the 5th, you recognize on third reading, finally passage of Board Bill number 62.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill 62.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 5th, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Alderman from the 5th, please proceed.
Mr. President, basically Board Bill 62 is a simple partial transfer from the city to LCRA, which is required for the assembling the properties for NGA.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 5th, you recognize to close.
I would like to renew my motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 62. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyers. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Was that an aye? Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Cone. 22 aye votes, 1 present.
By your vote, sustain the motion. Alderwoman from the 5th and third read and finally passed Board Bill number 62.
Board Bill number 49, floor substitute, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a Fifth Amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement with the Bi-State Development Agency of the Missouri-Illinois Metropolitan District and St. Louis County, amending that certain memorandum of agreement for the purpose of authorizing said agency to issue refunding obligations payable and secured by pledge of the annual appropriation of the quarter-cent sales tax levied by the city for public transportation purposes by ordinance 63168, the additional quarter-cent sales tax levied by the city for public transportation purposes by ordinance 64111.
Alderman from the 23rd, you recognize on third reading finally passage of Board Bill number 49, floor substitute.
I would ask for final passage of Board Bill 49 for substitute.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. Alderman from the 23rd, please proceed.
Well, we actually talked about this last meeting. It's just the fourth part of the bill, fourth part that gives Bi-State the ability to refund and use the funds. We actually talked about it last meeting a lot, and so I would just say that's about what it is.
Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 27th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 49, floor substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderman Arnowitz. I didn't hear your vote. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Cone. Twenty-two aye votes, 1 no vote.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. The Alderman from the 23rd and third read and finally passed Board Bill number 49, floor substitute.
Board Bill number 93 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard and ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing the execution of a parcel development agreement by and among the City of St. Louis, Northside Regeneration, and St. Louis Grocery Real Estate, and containing a severability clause.
Alderwoman from the 5th, you recognize on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 93 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill 93 as amendment.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 5th. Entertain seconds. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Alderwoman from the 5th, please proceed.
I'd like to renew my motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Been moved and seconded that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 93 as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Was that a no? Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Cone. "19 aye votes, 2 no votes, 2 present."
By a vote, you stay in motion. Alderwoman from the 5th and 3rd read and finally passed Board Bill number 93 as amended.
Board Bill number 88, sponsored by Alderman Carter, an ordinance requiring that requests for traffic calming as defined herein and related traffic complaints received by the city be managed in accordance with the centralized process to be called the City Traffic Calming Policy, granting the Director of Streets the authority to develop and promulgate the City Traffic Calming Policy, subject to the Board of Public Service approval, containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 27th, you recognize on the 3rd reading and finally passage of Board Bill number 88.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move that we third read and final pass Board Bill 88.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 20th. Alderman, please proceed.
Close.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman, is there a request for previous roll? There's been an objection to previous roll. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 20th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 88. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. No. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Cone. 21 aye votes, 2 no votes.
By your vote, you stay in the motion. Alderman from 27th, third read, and finally passed Board Bill number 88.
That's the extent of board bills for third reading engrossment.
Report of enrollment.
Board bills 62, 49 floor substitute, 46, 47, 48, 99, 92, 94, 93 as amended, and 88.
All other business being suspended, the president shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 85, sponsored by Alderman Boyd. The Board of Aldermen supports the principles of the Biophilic Cities Network and directs the City of St. Louis to join the Biophilic Cities Network.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 85.
Mr. President, I move for unanimous consent of resolution number 85.
Hearing no objection, please proceed, Alderman.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of resolution 85.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 16th, and the Alderman from the 12th. Alderman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Basically, resolution number 85 puts us on par with some real smart cities as part of the Biophilic Cities Network. And some of these smart cities that we'll be following is like Birmingham, Brisbane, Milwaukee, New York City, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Singapore, Wellington, just to name a few. And I'll read basically what is kind of expected of a city that's part of this network. It's a city of abundant nature where residents, young and old, have rich daily contact with the natural environment no matter where they reside, where larger natural areas and deeper natural experiences are an easy walk, bike, or transit ride away, and where the urban environment allows for the fosters connections with diverse flora and fauna. In biophilic cities, residents recognize, respect, are curious about, and actively care for the natural habitat around them, and they spend extensive time outside learning about the environment and participating in the natural world. And basically, this is pretty much in line with the city's sustainability policies, and it puts us again at part of a network worldwide in which we can share research and best practices.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th, that we adopt resolution number 85. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Motion carries.
That's the extent of first reading of resolution.
Second reading.
We have none.
Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, before you go to second reading, I wanted to suspend the rules to introduce resolution number 86, which is on everyone's desk. It should be one up there for you.
All right, excellent. So resolution number 86, and it is on everyone's desk?
Yes.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the first. I'll entertain a second on the motion. seconded by the Alderman from the 11th, that we suspend our rules for the purposes of introducing resolution number 86. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. I didn't hear you. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coatar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Cone. Alderman Carter. 19 aye votes.
Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd seek unanimous consent for resolution number 86, and I'd like to speak to why this resolution is necessary and at what point I'm having to bring this, okay?
All right.
Resolution number 86 is really important to all of us.
Please state your point of order.
Sure, if you ruled on her request.
She said that she likes to seek it. She did not. I don't think you officially requested unanimous consent.
Right, but I want to speak. I wanted to know if it was permissible to speak to it why I wanted it.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Many of us pass development ordinances as we try to plan for our community, and specifically in these ordinances, we speak to what can and cannot be in certain places. When I was here back in between 1991 and 2003, I actually did a resolution for the corner of St. Louis Avenue and Kings Highway in which we prohibited gas stations. One of the things, and there's a standard amount of things that you say about pawn shops and all of these things, and they're pretty standard, adult bookstores, X-rated movie houses, and on and on. And then while I was gone, Alderman Troop of the 1st Ward passed ordinance 68547. And that was for the properties immediately adjoining the property that I had prohibited a service station. And so that has been in effect since 2009, I think it's when it got passed. And so for many, many years, there has been a group of people who have been trying to put a store and a gas station there against the ordinances. And back a year or so ago, the board of BPS issued them a permit to build a gas station. And what they did is they issued the permit, but I did not get the notice until the day after they had had the hearing. And when I got the notice, I went to our then attorney and talked to him about it. I went to zoning. I went to everybody to say, hey, I didn't get this. They proceeded to go ahead, and we talked about laws that were in place, and they proceeded to go ahead and issue permits to do all kinds of things. This particular gas station is not on the corner of Kings Highway and St. Louis Avenue. They are building it. They built it on a residential street in the 4900 block of Terry, which is mostly single-family residents, very quiet. If you come down to our neighborhood after 7, 8 o'clock, there's nothing going on there. Everybody closes their doors and go into their houses or their backyards. So they issued this in spite of the fact that it was prohibited by law. And as I was going through the laws and our charters and things like that, it started to come up that they could not do this, that specifically our charter prohibits the Board of Public Service from granting any use or public use or that's inconsistent with any laws or general ordinance that are already on the books. And so I'm still telling them this, and they are not letting us see the permits of what was being built. People are asking about it. My community is against this. You're talking about unanimous consent. The community is against it. The developer brings in these group of people that are the people who have been causing the problems in our neighborhood. And he basically bought a bus full of the people who hang out on the corners and had them testify that they needed this. And the Board of Public Service agreed to let them have a conditional use to put a gas station as though we didn't have law into effect. So then it starts, not only do we have this law, we also have a law that says that you cannot have a gas station within so many feet of a residential community. You cannot have a driveway within so many feet of a residential community. And these are all listed in the resolution. And so they continued to just push this gas station. And not only that, they closed off any entrance to Kings Highway, and they opened the entrance only on the residential street, which has been a residential street for years and years, and there's not been a gas station in most of this property, and the gas station that was last there was over 10 years ago. And as I talked to some of the people who were involved in this, all of them originally said that there can't be a gas station there, and they were opposed to it. And then it turned out that they turned around and okayed the gas station anyway, even though they had told me privately that would never be. When this occurred, I was also approached and offered money to let this gas station go through, and I've told the president's office and I've told the mayor's office all about it. And so I went over to the federal officials and I reported it, because if it's illegal for us to take a bribe, it's most certainly illegal for a bribe to be offered to us. And this is not the first time many of you have heard about this. I've told everybody, because I cannot believe that this thing has occurred in spite of everything. They continue to build the gas station. The gas station is pretty much built now. I continue to try to pass legislation to prevent this, because I don't understand how they're breaking the law. And so at this point, my community and I are going to have to go to court. But in the meantime, I'm looking at a board that is out of hand, that can issue things over what we have passed with impunity. And I want to know, how is it that they are involved in doing this and overriding an ordinance that's been into law since before I came into office again, and who okayed this? I do know that when we showed up at one of the hearings, the former city councilor, Patty Hagerman, was representing them, and the current acting city councilor was lurking around in the background, and everybody seemed to be scared to say no to these people. And so they told me they had to say yes, even though it meant breaking the law. At this point, then, to me, we need to have a hearing, not only just for me, but for any of you all who have ordinances that restrict where things are going. Because if this is allowed to happen in the first ward, then this is going to be allowed to happen to plans that you may have in the future. And I don't believe that they ought to have that right to overrule. In fact, I know they shouldn't have the right to overrule ordinances in the Board of Aldermen. And the charter is very, very specific like that. So I did talk to the alderman from the 4th about if he would be willing to hold hearings. We don't do many things with intergovernmental affairs, but in this case it's just the right committee to do that, and to bring people down and make them explain about how they came to the agreement. Because when I asked them, everybody clams up, what is it that made them decide that they could overrule an ordinance at the Board of Aldermen and instruct a gas station to be built on a residential street? Because I invite any of you all to come up there and look at these streets with the big, beautiful houses and see what street in your ward you would want something like this to happen. I am appalled at the Board of Public Service. I'm appalled at zoning. I'm appalled because people told me that no, it would not happen. They would not overrule an alderman. When we had hearings before zoning and Board of Adjustment, the lawyer from them said, well, we're going to get that zoning changed. Well, here's the fact. The only way you can get it changed is through the Board of Aldermen, which I'm not changing that. So when they're talking about changing it, they're still breaking the law because it has not been changed. And I think that we need to look at this. We need, again, that's why I was so opposed to giving BPS anything under Alderman Carter, is because if we allow BPS to do this, if we allow the Board of Adjustment, if we allow any appointed bureaucrats to overrule the laws that we've made and go ahead and put gas stations any place on any street, including residential communities, we're going to be in trouble. And that is why I am trying to seek unanimous consent to have hearings with subpoena power to find out what is going on and why they would have a gas station on a residential street with the only entry on a residential street. We don't have a quorum anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Alderwoman from the first.
8, 9, 10.
I'm working on it. I'm working.
Okay.
I'm battening down the hatches for you. Let's keep. Is that it?
Okay. Well, we've been here for a long time, so I don't. If the Alderman from 21st has something to say, that's fine.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Would you like to request unanimous consent?
But I don't know if we have a quorum, so I don't want to.
I think we have a.
Okay. Then I would like to move for unanimous consent of Resolution 86.
Hearing no objection, please proceed on.
Unanimous consent.
All right.
Mr. President, he can object, but then okay.
Alderman from the 23rd, you do have a burning desire to object to the unanimous consent of this resolution?
I do. I believe it sounds important to me, but I think it should be sent to committee where it could be debated. And so I would object to unanimous consent and ask that it be sent to public safety or at least the committee.
You've objected to unanimous consent. Alderman from the first, you have the floor. There's been an objection to your unanimous consent. So you have several choices. You can move to suspend the rules to still pass it out today, to have it adopted by the full board today, or you can move to send it to committee, or just have it naturally go to the resolutions committee.
Mr. President, I'd move to suspend the rules to have it passed. And I want to say it has been, not this particular resolution, but this event has been before street committees for a very long time. And the reason why it's been before streets committee is because we have had to address this in a haphazard way to start just trying to stop what they were doing, even though they know that they were breaking the law. So the streets committee fully hashed this out. And that's why several of my bills came out with everybody voting for it, because we did talk about what was happening. So I would move to suspend the rules to pass Resolution 86.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the first. I'll entertain a second on that motion that we suspend the rules for the purposes of adopting Resolution number 86. At today's meeting has been moved. I'll entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd. Any discussion? Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize.
First would yield.
Alderman from the 1st, will you yield to the Alderman from the 22nd?
Yes, Mr. President, I will.
Alderwoman, I want to be clear what you're trying to do. Either you're trying to pass this out of committee today for the purpose of having an intergovernmental affair. If we pass this out, then what happens next?
It goes to intergovernmental affairs, where we will have hearings and bring the board before us to speak to how is it that they believe, why is it that they went against a sitting ordinance against the charter to allow a gas station on a residential street?
Okay. Why wouldn't we just assign it to that committee so that they can do the same thing?
The only reason I put, and I'm telling you why I brought it here, because the Alderman from the 4th has already agreed to have the hearing, is because I do want subpoena power. And so in order to have subpoena power, you need to put it in the resolution as I understand it. Now, our attorney says that he thinks that we don't need it, that Sam can just use it. But so I'm being honest and against me to say that as we have always done it, and I told him this, that when you want subpoena power, you have to put it in the resolution and bring it before, and not just have the chair have subpoena power. We used to have that power, and the former alderman from the 28th, many years ago, right before I came here, and he and some other people sponsored, I think, amendment to our rules, and you're looking at that says that we have to then put it in the resolution.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And just a point of clarification, I know a lot of times there's some confusion on that. When you send that resolution to committee, it goes to committee, the committee votes it out, but the resolution, once it's voted out, is directing that committee to hold the hearings.
Exactly.
So if we adopt it on the floor today, or we send it to committee and it comes back out, after it comes out, then that committee then will be directed to hold those hearings.
Right, but the only reason I even had to do that, what I was saying is because if
I know,
right.
I'm following you on that. I wanted to make sure everybody was clear what was going on. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? So it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the first. I entertain a second again for the
third.
And seconded by the Alderman from the third, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of adopting resolution number 86 today, which will direct the committee to begin hearings on said matter. It's been moved, seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman, I didn't hear you. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Conway. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. "14 aye votes, 2 no votes."
By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderwoman from the
Mr.
Alderwoman
President,
from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, as I understand it now, the resolution gets sent to committee, right?
Yes, you know what that you moved to
Send resolution 80.
suspend. No, that was a motion to suspend the rules on the unanimous consent so that it can be adopted today.
Okay, so I move to suspend the rules to.
No, we've done that. So now it's adopted.
I move to adopt resolution 88.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the first. Entertain a second on that motion. seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd and the 20th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Resolution number 86 adopted.
That's the extent of first reading of resolutions.
Second reading.
We have none.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
There are no meetings next week. That's the extent of my announcements.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 19th.
Very quickly, Mr. President, members of the board, I wanted to remind my constituency in the Tiffany and Botanical Heights neighborhood, we still have room for a few more campers for our summer camp that is being held July 11th through July 29th at Tiffany Park. The times of the camp is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with field trips, swimming every week, so I encourage you to get your child signed up. If you want to get a good feel of boxing, today we have a boxing event at Gamble Center from 6 to 9 p.m., but it's also Community Day, so from 2 to 6 p.m., a lot of information to help families, a lot of fun, 3-on-3 basketball, kickball, baseball. And also this Sunday at Ballpark Village, we'll have a boxing match from 2 to 6 p.m. We'll have Latin dancers, we'll have teen swag, we'll have local singers. I ask everybody to bring your lawn chairs, your blankets. It's free. Come and have some fun. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Wednesday, July the 13th, we're having our 13th annual cool down at Five Star Senior Center. Starts about 10 in the morning. We serve the seniors with a nice lunch, and then there's entertainment that starts after that, and it's always a good fun time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the Alderman from the 6th, 7th, and 15th be excused for necessary absence.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the board adjourns until Friday, September 9th, 2016, 10 a.m.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned.